Welcome to the Microdosing for Healing podcast. I'm your host, Casey Garrett, and together we'll be discovering and learning from inspiring voices of healers, medicine keepers, and visionaries. Every episode, we'll explore the world of health, vibrant wellness, and natural medicine for a new era of human society. Welcome to today's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I'm very excited to share two guides from the Guild of Guides in the Netherlands. Today, we're going to meet and share with Nina Badoux and Nigel Pedlingham, two guides that have deep, rich experience. And I also was inspired to bring them on to meet with you today because here in the United States, we're definitely at the point where this work is really breaking open into the mainstream and moving from the underground into the above ground, moving into the clinical and medical models. And we have so much to learn from our friends across the way where they have been doing this work for many years. In the Netherlands, this work is legal and has been for some time to work with truffles, which we're going to go into today. And so I thought it would be a really rich conversation, inspiring for some of the newer guides coming into the field in the US to learn from our colleagues across the way. So Nigel, Nina, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I love both of you have such beautiful, interesting business names for your practices. So I'd love for you to open up, introduce yourself, and share a little bit about the story behind your name. Nigel, let's start with you.
Yes, thank you. My practice is called MAGUEY, and that name has a rich history with me. The maguey plant, well, it's the maguey cactus. It's the Mexican agave cactus. And I just have a resonance with the flower of this particular cactus. So this is not a psychedelic cactus in any way. It's a cactus with many uses and many means. For some, they will know that the source of the cactus is also the source of mezcal. That has nothing to do with this at all. I've always been drawn to the flower which comes up once in its lifetime from this cactus. And it's a very majestic and very powerful flower. Stretches up usually like 4 or 5 meters high. It's very imposing structurally. It has very nice symbology behind it as this flower essentially is the beginning of the end, let's say, of the life cycle of this plant. So there's something very symbolic in the nature of this plant. But for me, I was always very drawn to its presence. And I knew when I was starting this practice that was the name of what the practice would be. Not going down anything practical here, and it's not the most practical sounding name and not the easiest name to find, and no one knows how to pronounce it. But it's as if those things didn't really matter, and it felt really important to be doing this work and associating with something that was important and had a name that actually did something to me, and not just choosing a name from practical purposes.
Beautiful. I love it. Love it. Nina, how about you?
Yeah, so it's very interesting, right? I guess there's quite some similarities there. So with what Nigel's just so beautifully explained about Maguey. So the name of my business is Nanacatl Healing, and Nanacatl comes from Nanacatl, and Nanacatl means flesh of the gods, food of the gods. And that refers to the magic mushrooms, to the psilocybin. And this is in the Nahuatl language, which is one of the indigenous languages of Mexico as well. I came upon this name from an extensive amount of time that I lived and learned in Mexico. And one of the most profound learnings that I received there was what it's like to listen to the land and to be in relationship with the land that you live on, and to be in conversation and relation with this land that you were born from as well, right? So actually the one of the most profound things that happened for me there was that I heard the land of my own birth calling again and saying like, hey, it's time to come back, right? And the teachings that I received there were really mainly about how people can live and learn without having lost this relationship and the ability to speak the language of the land and to speak the language of a plant or a mushroom that you're working with, right? So for me, it's an honoring in a way as well of the teachings that I've received there, and an honoring of this very long lineage that has not been forgotten in those lands. And yes, it's incredibly difficult to pronounce. People always misspell it. It's very interesting because Nana is almost the same as Nina. So people now started calling me Nana as well. So there's a very interesting sort of thing happening there, that it's starting to live its own life, you know. But yeah, like we said before we started recording, in a way, I always feel like if people really want to work with me and work with this medicine, they will find me, right? And sometimes it's better to have a little bit of a threshold and a filter in a way as well, right? It means also that for me personally as a guide, that the people that maybe I like to work with as well have had to put in a little bit more effort to find me.
Beautifully said, and a perfect segue to my first inquiry for you both. So one of the things we're seeing real time here is the shift from this work being primarily held underground for many decades, of people who don't have a website, who don't have a public presence, right? And for a long time, it took some effort. There was a threshold to find, and people had to come and be called and put some effort into to find. Now, with the immediacy and being held in our more consumer capitalistic models of holding the medicine, there's more, it's the medicine and spirit are doing all the work, right? And human come with their entitlement and their speed and want things efficient and convenient and next weekend. So as practitioners who've been holding this work in an open, accessible place, how do you work with people to invite them to slow the process down and work at the speed of spirit and nature versus the speed of the human? Nigel, do you want to speak first on that?
You know, what's coming up for me is just an immediately embodied reaction to that, which is taking a very, very long and deep breath. And just feeling into how we embody that as practitioners in everything we do. So yeah, let's just take a long, deep breath. And how do we translate that breath also into our practice? Because we know what happens when we try and function in everyday life and we forget to breathe, or we become breathing too fast, or we are taking breaths that don't nourish. We make mistakes, or we get quickly tired out. So I think it's that embodiment of the breath, and using that as a companion and as a guide to guide us in how we show up to do this work.
Beautiful. Thank you. Even in the arrangement of this conversation, I just want to reflect to both of you. I so appreciated. I had a lot going on. I was moving. Nigel was on holiday with his family. And Nina, when I emailed Nina, her responder says, I'll get back to you when I have time to. You know, I'm out living life. And I grant you the same in reciprocity to the same spaciousness and easefulness. And it just comes through in the way you hold your practices, the way it feels to read through your practices and visit your website. It feels that same ease and elegance and spaciousness. So I just want to appreciate that very much. And the embodiment of the work. Nina.
Yeah, what I think is so interesting, what happens a lot is that as a practitioner, we get contacted, or I get contacted by someone and they're saying, I don't see any dates that are lining up. You don't seem to have that many retreats on your schedule. And for me, it's October now and I have 4 more groups coming up for this year. And that feels like that's good, right? I have private sessions next to that as well. But it almost feels like people just expect to be able to choose, like, okay, I'll be joining next week, right? But my whole model is set up that people need to have 3 weeks preparation up front. So they can't even join if they don't have that amount of time up front. Because there's a lot of homework that I share. There's calls that they have to go through. And the first thing in that material is about slowing down. It's about opening up the senses. It's about noticing what is present in your daily surroundings, right? And then sometimes when people go through that process, they end up feeling, oh, this is not my time yet to start doing this work.
And I think we are invited as practitioners to be practicing exactly what we preach. So if we're bringing that into the preparation that we're expecting any participant to do, then that's how we should be showing up for the work that we do. So yeah, I think that goes back to the question you asked, which I think was more, it was the question towards practitioners, right? And as to how do we go at the pace that's right for us and right for the medicine and right for the people we're going to be serving? And recognizing that, yeah, we do need to buck the trend of the dominant paradigm that we live in, which is faster, 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 more, more, more. And it's very tempting to either be sucked into that or to continue in that, if that's what you've become, that's what you're used to living by. And generally this work doesn't like to work like that. And you quickly find, if you don't know that already, you quickly find out.
Yes, let's talk about that, because that's one of the things I know from newer guides are really, really surprised how much energy it is to hold space for another. Especially those practitioners that are coming from fields that are very different, from non-space holding, non-therapeutic fields. So as guides who have held space and ceremonial space many, many, many hundreds of times, can you speak to, especially those who are experiencing ceremony, but also younger, newer guides coming into space, what that's actually like as a space holder?
It's very relevant. I just before we started recording the podcast, I was in a call working on the integration of a young guide that I am mentoring a little bit, and especially this topic came up as well. And the biggest reflection they had was that they felt they were doing too much, right? And I feel there's this big sense of, for facilitators, there's so many trainings, and what do I need to do, and what are all the protocols? I think most of it is about doing less. And in that regard, there's a lot of humility that comes with the work as well, because it's not so much about who am I, and what do I have as a person and in my whole tool belt that I can bring to the table, and all of my certain certificates and all of this. Can you put all of that aside and just be present? And what has been very helpful for me in this work is, as much as I can, to leave my own story out of the room. So empty myself, leave my own story out of the room, and just be present and listen. Right? Just listen. And through coming back to that time and time again, right now, after ceremony, after work, I don't feel tired. I don't feel exhausted. Because the stories that have been brought in by my clients are not hooking on to my own, because I don't have my own story present in the room while I'm facilitating. Right? So I think it's always about coming back to, why am I doing this? Like, why am I even wanting to do this practice? Why do I want to be a guide? Right? Do I have something to prove? Like, what is where am I in my path? And why do I think it's a good idea for me to start doing this? What is my goal with it? And that you can ask yourself time and time again within the session as well. If you feel you're going to take an action, right? You feel there's something coming up, there's something bubbling up that you feel like, oh, I want to give comfort to this person right now, or give them a certain adjustment. Always ask yourself, where is it coming from?
Yeah. Thanks, Nina. What's coming up for me when I hear you talk about that as an important thing to bring into the equation here is also kind of the unglamorous side of holding space. So often we think of holding space as ceremony, let's say the actual work, which, as Nina says, if one does properly, one can emerge feeling, not necessarily de-energized, but perhaps even energized, or not, at least not spent. But for me, what's coming up, having also just come out of hosting a retreat for the last few days, is everything else that comes in when one hosts retreats, and the unglamorous side of this work, which is the making the beds, the scrubbing the toilets, the cooking the food, depending on the setting in which you're in, all of which are as important. They all add up to the overarching experience, and all of which have to still be done from that same place of genuineness, that same place of love. I clean the toilets as well as I serve the truffle, but let's not beat around the bush here. It's a lot. And if you've done 3 days of 12, 13-hour days, including space holding in the middle of it, it's tiring. So be prepared. It's let's just face it. It's a lot.
Instagram makes it look so easy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you'll note there is no Instagram feed. I was actually thinking about this today. There is no reel from my latest retreat. I would love to have made a reel from my latest retreat. I didn't have time to pick that phone up in 3 days. So there ain't nothing coming out from this. I wish.
Beautiful, beautiful. I would love for you both to reflect on, one of the things I think the advantages of working in a legal, accessible, open space in the Netherlands is it's a defined profession there, right? It's a defined thing and has been for some time versus elsewhere, and certainly in the United States, like, we're trying to make it into a profession, right? Based on professions that are pre-existing. And so particularly when it comes to our clinical medical models, there's a lot of people rushing in to get psychedelic training to just plunk that into their existing practice, right? Specifically ketamine, I'm referring to most of the time. And so it's creating a lot of friction, and I think taking us away in many ways from the essence of this work, rather than honoring the work in and of itself, for itself. We're trying to bring it into our pre-existing, somewhat dysfunctional, limited existing structures in the West. So I would love for you to speak to some of your reflections around that, and some of the things you see when you have people, clients, for example, coming to you, orienting themselves clinically, right? How do you bring them into slowing down and kind of having a different lens and approach to the work they're about to do? Nigel, do you want to start with you?
Yeah, it's interesting. What's coming up is something I've been reflecting on quite a lot recently, which is that shift in client awareness that I've noticed over the last few years, with many more presenting knowing a lot, as in they've read a lot, they've watched a lot of documentaries now, they've maybe even read quite a lot of research, and that is different than it was a little while ago. Which on one hand is good, that people are informed and they maybe know a bit about what they're going in for. But on the other hand, informed by what and by whom, and with what, and come in with what expectation. And often it's coming very much from this kind of, this cerebral route, let's say. So I think as practitioners, or certainly if I just talk from the perspective of myself, it's knowing what you do and how you work and owning that, and being very clear at the beginning of any relationship as to how I work, and the expectation on the exchange which is going to happen between the two of us as part of this work, because it is an exchange, it is a co-created process. It's not just, coming in, sitting down and receiving. It's very much, as I said, a co-created process here. So for me, it's very important in the early days to really talk about how I work, to talk about the practices that will be involved, to talk about how important I do find that ceremony and ritual is as part of this work, how I do find that nature awareness is an important part of this work, how I do bring contemplative practices into this work. And it's not going to necessarily follow a medicalized, let's say, standardized route. We have to work with nuance here. We have to work with different approaches. So I think it's that. It's just making people aware of how each of us work, and this goes back to the point you just said about here there being it's a defined role, let's say. And that's true on one sense, in the sense that we can be above ground, those that are working at least in the legal psilocybin space, but that doesn't mean that the role is defined. It doesn't mean that everybody who's doing this is doing it in any way near the same way. And that's something that we actually as a community have quite a lot of conversation around, is how do we actually celebrate that, and how do we make space for the whole range of different approaches to this work, because this isn't a one size fits all approach, and it never has been, and personally I hope it never will be.
Beautiful.
And I think that's what makes psychedelics different from any other sort of therapeutic model or drugs that someone would take for a certain diagnosis. Because psychedelics have been labeled as drugs at a certain moment, they're being looked at in a certain way from a clinical perspective also, and they're trying to fit it within that model, right? Within, you're taking something and that will then do something in your brain and that will have a certain result, right? But psychedelics just don't work like that. That's what they're seeing in a lot of the research as well. And that's what what's making it difficult also to make a standardized protocol, to be able to come out with these forms and checklists and to train people within that protocol and that model, because psychedelics touch upon philosophy, ecology, biology, consciousness, right? The nature of consciousness. So you cannot say, and that's where I think we have a lot of responsibility as well, and something that we're trying to be a part of with the guild also, is that this therapeutic model of working with psychedelics in the psychology sphere, that doesn't just land within the model of psychology, because then it would be too narrow, right? You would be missing out on many aspects of it. And in a way, I feel that is, apart from it just being a pity, from my perspective, it's a bit dangerous also for the clients that you're working with, because there's many things that can happen on levels where a standard psychologist might not be trained for, not be aware of, and especially if it's just poured into this model, right? So in that regard, I feel there's a lot of steps that still need to be taken, and maybe some of the semantics need to start changing around the psychedelic, and is a very fragile place the field is in this moment as well, because there is so much research being done that is still taking place in this standardized field, right? The research that are getting grants are also the research that these pharmaceutical companies need, right? So there's a lot of things that are tied in, which are publishing certain results that are overlooking other aspects that are very much present within the work.
So important. Thank you so much. Yes. One of the things I think I see newer guides here doing is to look for proof from academia and science to take back to their clients, assuming that this is going to justify and legitimize the work in the standardized way. Well, we have to wait for the science. We have to wait for the proof and the research to come in before it is shown. And again, I am always kind of in my mentorship bringing people back to nature doesn't need our proving, right? Nature's just fine without us. When we are, conversation with Nigel, one thing he shared with me was it's so important, those of us who are deeply in this work, devoted to this work, have been doing this work for some time, is to take the time to educate in a different perspective, versus assuming people know, because if we leave people up to their own devices to learn from the internet, right, we're going to miss the opportunity to help people decondition from these limiting perspectives and ways. So I appreciate both of you and your reflections so much. I'd love for you to share a little bit about the Guild of Guides, how that began, kind of what is your ethos, how does it work? Nigel, do you want to share with us a little bit about the Guild?
Sure. The Guild of Guides Netherlands is the professional association for facilitators of legal psychedelic experiences working in the Netherlands. It was founded by a group of practitioners back in 2020 who've been doing this work for a while and wanted to come together to form essentially, a peer group around this work, recognizing that many people at that time were working in isolation, and recognizing that working as community is usually better in these sorts of circumstances. So there was this desire to come together as a group of peers to support one another and to learn from one another. But then importantly, the other element, and equally important, if not more important, was to professionalize the work that was being done so that clients, participants who were reaching out to guides to do this were reaching guides who had appropriate levels of skill and had that ethical foundation to the work they were doing. So it was started as a community of practice in 2020, and then in 2022 we were formally registered as a foundation here in the Netherlands, not a foundation, an organization, with a clear statute, with clear mission and vision. And we have these three tracks that we really work with, which is peer support and peer and the skilling up of peer and the community element that is so important as practitioners. The provision of quality provision for client base. So we have a code of conduct that everybody who is a member has to work by, a code of ethics. There is specific membership criteria, for example, that one has to have to become a member to ensure, a minimum standard of care for the marketplace, let's say. And an important component of that as well is providing an accountability framework. So if any participants or even practitioners are seeing examples of conduct which don't, for example, meet the code of conduct, there's a way for them to report that, for example. And then the third and emerging arm of the work of the Guild is to be in dialogue with the broader community. So to represent the work that we're doing, to represent the legal psychedelic work that's taking place in the Netherlands. So it's more of a longer term goal of ours, but be working more effectively within, let's say, that media communications and policy landscape as well.
Thank you. Wonderful. Nina, I would love for you to reflect regarding the Guild as a guide. What is your favorite part of being part of the Guild?
It has, for me, been a game changer. Exactly what Nigel alluded to, this feeling of not working in isolation anymore, to be able to reach out to my peers, to have this, in a way, immediate access to support, to be able to bounce off of each other, to have a group that I can just reach out to when I have certain questions, which can be very practical, which can be spiritual. The group is very diverse as well. So a lot of the guides have a lot of complementary skills and trainings. So we really, we feed off one another, right? And especially in the beginning, what has been very valuable for me were our peer supervision meetings, where we come together for an hour and people can bring in cases that, have things that have come up for them, that they have questions around, that they need support with, right? And how valuable is that to be able to together look at what has come up for yourself personally in the work, for the client, and to be able to learn from that together. So it's a learning community as well. And there's no hierarchy felt also. So that's what I really appreciate. There's this it's called a duocracy as well. So if you feel like you want to step in more into helping the Guild develop, you're able to do that as well. So there's this real sense of camaraderie in a way of, we all care about the development of this field, and that it can land in a place where it can become sustainable and accepted, and giving space to those underground facilitators, right, that have walked on the edges of things, and to be able to give a platform to those voices.
Love it. Beautiful. Thank you so much. I'd love to ask you both in terms of finding a guide. from the public. I get a lot. I just had twice yesterday, people reach out looking for a referral for a guide from me. And I always share with them, step into our community and meet the guides, just give yourself the opportunity to presence with them, get to know them, get to feel their presence. How do they speak? How do they feel to you? Because that soul to soul connection is the most important thing, right? It's not geography and who's convenient or who's available first. Right? That's typically, when it comes to this work, the last things that you should be considering, right? So when you have clients reaching out in the public, what would you share with someone who has microdosed, for example, who has educated themselves, is now looking to take that next step to find a guide? What are some of the things that they can consider?
Let's go back to that whole breath thing and just take a breath for a moment and just let the guiding questions come in. So why am I doing this? Why now? What for? Maybe you can't answer those all the time, all at the moment, but at least have them there as maybe guiding lights. And then, as you just said, start. I think that's usually the best thing. There's nothing to say you can't stop. So I always say, when I'm working with, even if I've started working with a client, you can stop at any point of the process up until and when up until that point of consuming the medicine. So no one you don't have to do anything here. So start, take your time. Again, as you alluded to, we can't fit this into the existing paradigm and the existing boxes. So it's not like, oh yeah, I'm free at 2:30 in 2.5 weeks' time. That's when I'm going to choose a guide that's available for me. Yeah, I wouldn't suggest that. For me, the most important thing is meeting guides through the eyes and through the heart, and seeing whether you resonate or not, because trust is at the absolute foundation of this work. And it's also not a one-sided relationship here. It's very much a relationship from both sides. So as a guide, for example, I would never work with anybody through this process who I've also not met, because they have to feel that they can trust me and they feel ready to surrender into the care that I can offer. But I also have to feel that I can support them with what they're presenting with and what they're looking for. So this really, again, becomes a relationship of mutuality, of mutual respect, of mutual trust. So if either of us at any point in that relationship feel there's something off, we have to honor that and look into that and decide where do we go from there.
Beautiful. Nina?
And I feel that that's so nice, again, with the guild, is that if I have somebody reaching out to me, coming onto my path, and we do have that exploratory call, because I always give that as an option for people. They can book an exploratory call through my website without any commitment, and for 15 minutes. If longer is necessary, but usually you can get the gist of it in those 15 minutes for both of you. If it feels right, you will know pretty soon. And if I feel I am not the right person, I'm able to refer them to one of my colleagues within the guild, right? Because there is this whole array of people there. And even I can make that suggestion of, like, share it with my peers. For me, what's a very important one as well, what came up for me when you're looking for a guide, and you found one, and you haven't spoken to them yet, see if you can find some people that have experience with this person. Can you get some, referrals? Can you get some firsthand stories? And not just the testimonials on someone's website, because of course, they will be full of roses and glitter. I think that most of my clients, I would dare say 90% of my clients are referrals. They all are through word of mouth that come onto my path. And I feel that that's really usually the best way for someone to find a person, right? But yeah, there needs to be a yes from both sides. I always say I only do my work if I feel 100% sure, not 99. I need to feel 100% sure, and I love what Nigel just shared. Like, I give myself the space, and of course I make my clients are aware of that, and they get the space as well up until the last moment to say, let's not go through with this, right? Let's not go through with this, because I think that's there, like, your first yes is maybe not a yes later on, right?
Yeah, it kind of comes back to that thing, doesn't it, around if we're talking about consent, and there's three answers, aren't there? There can be a yes, there can be a no, and there can be an I don't know to what's going on right here. So let's respect all of those and take the time to explore what's going on here, because yeah, you cannot rush through that. And I think something to add on to this as well is, even once you've met your guide as someone who's looking, is ask anything you need to ask. And I think a guide worth their salt will be able to answer your questions. And if they're not answering them, if they might not necessarily know a factual answer, but then the guide should be able to give the right answer, the fact that they don't know. And that's also okay. We aren't infallible here. We don't know everything. But it's also how they handle that, isn't it? How do you handle the not knowing with something? But I would be, people come to me and they can really, what do they want to know? What's going to help them feel comfortable and safe in doing this? Is it about some of my professional background? Is it about some of my personal background? Is it about some of my values? And I'm always very happy to answer those questions, because there's a need for them. Maintaining certain boundaries, of course, but I think it's an important one. And it's, again, we want that relationship to also be one of equal footing. And I don't believe in any sense that we want to embark on some journey where we are the knowing guide and they are the following participant. We're two equals on a journey here, and it's just that there's guidance coming in, and I think that's really very valid. This.
Lovely. I love it. One of the things I loved in exploring each of your websites, it struck me as an invitation, right? It was giving me a glimpse into your soul, who you are as people. And I find that that's part of the friction with trying to legitimize this work. When we have consultants and coaches and business people coming in to make this into a business, they're still operating off of those old paradigms of a consumer or a customer and convincing. In my case, I remember having many rounds of battling with a coach who insisted I have a countdown timer. And a pressure mechanism, because that's what people need to respond to. And it's like, no, so much of this work is just giving people some insight and an invitation to connect with you, get a sense to know you. And yes, step in versus a pressuring, convincing that we're used to. So I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because it's I think as guides in this space, it's something that we feel, there's a fine balance, isn't there, between believing in what you do and sitting there and trusting the universe that your door will continue to be graced, and then going the other way and going into full blown old paradigm marketing. And it's a game of fine balance and that constant need to check in So I've certainly done things over the years, I know, where I've kind of gone back into that old way of kind of marketing, thought, okay, I need to SEO the hell out of my website, and I need to do this and I need to do that. And I sit there and yeah, you just get this, like, when this ickiness starts to come, and I'm like, yeah, there's something off here. This isn't the way I want to operate. This isn't the way I want to do this. So go back to your values, go back to source and trust it. And as you say, and I'm so happy that came across in your little explorations there, that sense of invitation does come through, because that is it. You can't sell this, nor should we. It's not coming from an ethical perspective, no one should be being convinced to come and do this work. It needs to be an invitation. This work exists and it's here and it's done this way. Do you feel the call to come in? And if the answer is no, then that's a very, very legitimate answer.
And I think that ties into lots of times as well when a participant or a client has had a certain experience which turned out to be very positive, with a very positive outcome. And then they might have this sense of, oh, my partner should come, my sister should come. This would be incredible for my mother. We need to heal our whole family relations, and they all need to go. And can I put them in touch with you? And then my response is always, they're welcome, but it needs to be coming from them, right? Can you bring it in such a way that you're just going to share your experience and that something can come up for them if they are interested, right? So because that moment I feel of someone getting the inkling, becoming interested, becoming curious into this work is a part of the whole process. It's a part of the whole work. So if you take that away from someone, they're coming into the process with having missed a step, a very crucial step.
Yeah, that's lovely. And it's also just thinking that the timeline that we're working with here also is undefinable. Like, there's generally a let's say a programmatic timeline that we might work with each other. Once we really start working with each other, there's always going to be a window of time together. But that piece before then can be really long. So someone's come and had a discovery call with me, and they're all keen. And they've got that far. Honestly, to have got that far is already quite far. And it's something I always say that the ceremony starts the minute that first email came. That's when the ceremony opened. But it can be a year until someone actually is sitting here in front of me. And that had to happen for whatever reason. That year had to happen, and that year was important, and all sorts of things probably happened in that year. And normally the reason why you're coming that year later is vastly different than perhaps what it was when you first did your initial inquiry. But that's also important because you've been doing your own work in that year. So yeah, you've come when the time was right. And again, as guides, we have to respect and honor that. And you can't be, calling people up the week after, going, "Hey, did you read this? When are you coming? I've got a date available in 2 weeks. Shall I pencil you in?"
Yeah.
And that's not to say that sometimes some encouragement can help, because we're going in to do sacred and deep work here, and there often comes with that areas of concern, or our protectors kind of maybe are coming in and making us go and helping us go slower, let's say. And sometimes a bit of encouragement can help, but it can't come back into that what we just were talking about earlier, into hard sell.
Mm-hmm. So appreciate that. I was just sharing with the guides in my current training program that I'm already watching them even before they enroll. Kind of how they come in. Are they very certain? Are they very tentative? How are they moving? How are they paying? How are they questioning? How did it go when we're booking our discovery call? All of those things long before they work with the medicine, long before they're in the training or in the journey or in the program, they're already giving me clues. Their soul is already talking to mine.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And giving me little clues of how to support them along the way. And so, same thing. We'll have people that kind of watch us for years, see how we operate to develop that trust with consistent visibility. Other people were like, I saw you and I just knew. And that's right too for some people.
Mm-hmm.
So, I appreciate that. I would love to open the floor to you both now, just a kind of an open-ended question, what you're seeing in your clients right now. Like any themes you're seeing, edges you're seeing, advice, it might be caution that you're seeing. I find that I love talking to working guides because so often what you're seeing inside your practice is exactly what people need to hear in the moment. So I'd love for you to share anything that you feel really called to share in this moment.
I'm seeing a tiredness. And as I hear that word, I'm not quite sure that's exactly the right word, but it's something like that, that is not the cause. It's not why people are coming through the door, let's say. But often with that is this tiredness and this invitation that comes through doing this work to actually connect to that and to honor it and to respect it and to perhaps surrender to it. And it's often very well cloaked in other clothes, but it's quite often there. And that tiredness there comes from very many. It can be a personal tiredness, it can be a collective tiredness, it can be. But I would say that is one thing. There's a bit of hunger, there's a hunger for healing, let's say. And I think we have to really hold that with respect. Sometimes it can be seen as a little bit too eager, but at the same time, it's there for a reason because there's a lot. There is a lot out there, and so that it comes with that hungriness, and especially when you start to get a bit of a taste. So how to manage, how to just again honor the hunger and understand where it's coming from, and again and the fact that this work is, even if you're working one-on-one with people, it's never just the individual you're working with here, especially now. We are all part of communities. We're all part of systems. We're all part of a collective. So recognizing that. And then I think maybe just as a final point, and I'll hand over to Nina, just again that point I mentioned earlier on around the prize of wisdom, the prize of knowing, let's say. And it's as if, and that's one of the things that I've been so curious to see of people coming. I was working at a retreat the other day, and someone was asking me all these complex questions about research, very, very specific. And I was just like, you're talking to the wrong man here, I'm afraid. Yeah, I know this works, and I will honor the pathways that it takes. I don't need to have read that particular. I don't need to, and I haven't read that particular paper you're working from, and I can't answer your question. And for a while, there was this kind of shock and horror in the room, but I felt very emboldened and able to say that because, and I'm not devaluing research here in any shape or form, not at all. But it isn't everything. It isn't everything, and not everything we're going to find in this work is going to be found in a And I hope that's all right to say in this forum because, yeah, am I being controversial here? I don't know.
Not whatsoever.
No.
No.
Oh.
No, I just want to appreciate and all of that. I will reflect to what you named as tiredness. I was just sharing the other day. I've been sensing a weariness was the word
There you
that I
go.
used. Just
Mm-hmm.
a weariness from the way we have been living.
Mm-hmm.
It's hundreds of years
Mm-hmm.
old. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a soul weariness that I feel like so many clients right now are looking to us guides just to affirm this in
Mm-hmm.
them and to
Yeah.
offer a different way.
Yeah.
Right. And our embodiment of doing the things like saying, I will email you back when I get to it. Right. And you do the same. Right.
Mm-hmm.
To offer things as an invitation without
Mm-hmm.
pressure or control. Or everything's a problem to be fixed immediately. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And when we kind of come and offer them a new approach to, I think that's what so many people are tired of. It's very, very old and very real. And to your latter point, yes, I mean, in my own program, I bring in scientists, I bring in clinicians and research, but I share with the guides, is this really relevant to your clients? When you are down with them in a session, with them holding space for them, how much does the neuroscience come up? Never. Never. Mostly we need to educate ourselves around these things just so we can speak to the public and we can educate because we live in a time where science is king. It
Mm-hmm.
has not always been and it will not always be. But in the slice of history that we're in, science is what legitimizes the work. And so to be aware of the research, yes. To be aware of the neuroscience and the physiology, yes. But is this going to be when you're down in real life with people?
Yeah.
Is this going to be the thing that convinces people or makes or breaks their
Mm.
experience? No,
No.
no.
And let's also bring in here as well the breadth of not only the breadth of experience within the psychedelic space, but also the breadth of need. And that breadth of need is also way wider than we're necessarily seeing in the realms that are being researched. Yeah, we're researching deep clinical need, and there absolutely is the need for that. And there will therefore be approaches and protocols that come as a result of that. But not most of the people who are, let's say, coming to us in this realm don't fall necessarily into that medicalized end of the spectrum. They're presenting a whole range of other need. And it's going to be a very, very long time before those sorts of needs are also ever falling into research protocols.
What I think is, it was really interesting actually to ponder on this question while listening to the both of you. And what I think can be sort of stalking, from a corner for many participants, many clients, is this it's like sneaking in, is this feeling of, I'm going to do this work because I'm not whole. I'm broken. There's many pieces that need to heal. I'm not yet where I need to be in my life. There's still this, like, a lot of times it's fueled by this belief that we're not good enough, right? That we need to be somewhere else than where we are. And this experience and this, drug is going to help us get there, kind of thing. So I feel many times there's this belief system that is really heady, right? That actually doesn't have that much to do about the body and where the body is. As many times I feel when people come into this work with many worries, many beliefs, anxieties, those are all not present in the present moment, right? My body where I'm sitting right now is safe, right? There is nothing for me to worry about in this moment. All of that happens in my mind. So I think what I'm always trying to bring into this work is from the start is this work is about getting out of the head and dropping back into the body and letting go. And that I think is very interesting in preparation as well, because preparation can be so focused on intention, motivation. Why am I doing this work? What is the goal? What do I want to get out of it? Right? What is the outcome? So in a way, it's like prep, and then I'm going to jump over, and then I'm going to get there, right there where I want to be, the person that I want to become, or how I should be. And then all of this, all of the good stuff is kind of looked over and is passed over. And I feel it's really about this dropping in. And for me, that's a lot of times where teachings from Buddhism come in as well, of just observing and sitting with what is, right? And being able to do that in preparation already, right? In the preparation for this work. Can the preparation have the same quality that we're trying to bring in to the actual journey? Right? When we invite people inside of the journey to just observe and be compassionate and sit with whatever arises, can we already bring that into the preparation and then extend it into the integration? And so there's this. And it's interesting because one of the things throughout the years that I keep hearing time and time again in the integration is that people reflect back and they say, oh, none of it mattered. Right? None of it mattered. And they don't mean that in a nihilistic sense, right? The opposite. And they say, many times I hear them say, oh, but I knew all of this already, but I didn't feel it. Right? So they already knew all the insights from all the talks with therapists and all the processes that they've gone through, but they didn't embody it yet. It didn't land into the body. In Dutch, we have this beautiful word for that. It's belichamen. And it really means to embody a certain insight, to embody a knowledge, right? And I feel that's where psychedelics, and for me, especially psilocybin, can really help. A lot of times I hear people reflecting back on how psilocybin made them feel. A lot of times they say, made me feel my body was very heavy. Sometimes they talk about being buried under the ground, where the mycelium runs. And it's about this grounding, about like landing back into the body. Can we make ourselves heavier and just trust and say, I don't need to know why. I don't need to know why. I'm just going to follow my feet, right? And trust that I will arrive where I need to arrive, and that I am right now already where I need to be.
Beautiful.
Can I just add on something to that?
Do.
Because this resonates so much, and I think Nina brings up such an important point there of the holistic nature of this work. That this, with giving all due respect to the medicine we're working with, these processes are also way more than just the psychedelic experience. It is the whole triad, let's say, of we know we can give lip service to preparation and integration, but the way one prepares and the way one integrates in terms of the modality that the guide is working with is so valuable. And I often say that in the programs that I do, I'm hopefully enabling people to have access to a suite of tools which they can take with them in the long run, which is beyond the psychedelic experience, let's say. So you have maybe introduced someone to their breath and help them develop that relationship with their own breath, which is there day in, day out, minute in, minute out. You have introduced them to the power of ritual, and they're then emboldened to then incorporate maybe ritual into their into their daily practice, you have helped them reconnect to that tree that stands outside their front door. And that tree can become a dear friend and sentinel and guide for the future. You have introduced them the list goes on and on and on and on. But those gifts are built in to an holistic program, with the offer of them being taken up and then run with in your own life post the psychedelic experience. And they're really given as invitations, as gifts for you to then bring in. I've had clients, who kind of said, oh yeah, I was a bit put off by coming to you initially because you seemed a little bit woo-woo. Now I get the woo-woo, and I'm like, yeah, there you go. So whatever you want to call it, but yeah, we're working with ancient practice here, and ancient practice to the modern mechanistic mind can just look woo-woo, and it's woo-woo if it's not delivered with grace and delivered with authenticity and ownership and respect. But if it's done through those means, then it's the bits, not the bits, the bits will stick that need to stick.
Well said. Thank you. My final question for you both, and this is on behalf of the guides, the collective guides in the field and coming into the field. One of the things that really takes them quite aback, they have a lot of questions around, is, you start off doing a lot of research and academic training and clinical training, but then once they step in and they get to see what it's like actually holding space for people, a lot of times they're like, oh, like, how do you learn as a guide to hold space for someone who just lost a child, someone who was just diagnosed with a terminal illness, someone who has memories surfacing of childhood abuse, and the things that we, as practicing guides, we get very used to. And they asked me, like, how do I build that capacity? Like, how do I learn to, as a guide, build that capacity in myself to hold space for life's most difficult things? So I wanted to extend an invitation to you both to share what in your own practice, in your own life experience, your own background, do you feel has most enabled you to hold space for people in these most honest ways?
So what's coming up for me is, can I step into empathy without personifying? Right. So can I fully be present with whatever is coming up? I think from my own personal practice, what I learned a lot from is my practice as a dying counselor, as being a death doula. So I volunteered at a hospice. And for me, there's a lot of complementary aspects, right, of sitting with someone who is actually passing over in this life and holding space for someone who is passing over in many different psychedelic dimensions. But so I think it's all about your own practice. First, personally, how comfortable am I sitting with my own emotions, right? With the whole array of it. Do I have the space for myself, for my own world of suffering, of grief, of anger, of explosions, of stuckness? Because that's again where that reflection comes in, like being a mirror also. Am I able to be compassionate towards myself? And if I am, then that is something that will be felt by the client as well, right? So we are these mirrors, right? So that's why I think for a lot of people going into this practice, so much comes up, right? Because it immediately becomes a personal practice as well. And it's one that's never ending, right? it's one that we're never finished with. We're forever students, right? So I think that's really a start of it, is how compassionate am I towards myself.
I really like that. And I think what you're alluding to there is the importance as guides that we all do have our own practice, in whichever way you want to call that. For some it may be spiritual practice, for some it may be a different form of practice. But how can we show up in that place of love and compassion and stay there? For me, what was also coming up, that kind of goes right back to where we started, was kind of around the ethics of slowness, and also starting to really check in with who am I serving, and am I ready to serve them? And there is this thing around, yes, but certainly when you start, when this work is beautiful. There's no denying this work is very beautiful. But it can also be quite seductive, and it can pull you in. It's like, I need, there is a need to, I need 3-4 clients a month. I have to have that, to pay my mortgage. Then I accept any client that comes in. Am I ready to sit with someone who has just lost a child? Maybe not. So then that's the answer, isn't it? Of course, we all have to be there eventually. You have to sometimes step up, but it's really that constant thing of checking in, of kind of going, is this right now to do? And then what's coming up for me is learning from others, is also witnessing other people holding space and witnessing how they do it. As an individual, you can't have all the answers to do this, and otherwise it becomes a very lonely space. And then so having opportunity to work with others, to be an apprentice to someone, to intern with someone, or to simply if you get the opportunity to be working in other group settings, you see how other people hold space, so you can learn from them. But two, you also see how you hold space. And for me, that's also been equally important to kind of go, oh yeah, actually, I wouldn't do it like that. It's also sometimes valid if it's done again from that place of groundedness and ego check.
Beautiful, both of you. Yeah, I think, and I've seen it naturally happen as more and more guides and space holders step into mentorship and supporting others in these more, as Nina shared, the guide setup where it's more circular and non-hierarchical, as we all have things to learn from each other, and I see that older, wiser, very experienced people have just as much to learn from people new, because they bring such different energy and abilities to every space. And so all of this too speaks to, we're getting back to learning and healing and growing the way we used to, which was apprenticeship and sharing and togetherness and presencing together, versus the academic style teaching and learning that we have done, that's very siloed, and you don't get to learn experientially from one another. So this is true both in healing and how we learn to heal, both. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you both so much. In closing, is there anything that you would like to share on any subject, things that you're seeing, reflections you have, as well as where folks can find you?
Well, the word that's coming up for me now, and that's maybe just very prevalent of the time in the world and everything that's happening right now, I would just like to share this message that Jane Goodall shared in one of the very last interviews that she gave. before her recent passing is to keep hope. That, right? To keep hope and to keep trusting. It's always very difficult, I feel, for us humans, because we are only here for such a short amount of time in this lifetime, to be able to see outside of ourselves and to see outside of this linear frame of time, and that has been, put out for us. And in that regards, to this ambition that we might feel like this is where we want the field to go to, and this is, with legalization, and it all needs to happen in my lifetime, and I need to be on the forefront of it. With every sort of movement, also if you look at the different sort of stages of feminism, right? There's different layers, there's different movements, and we all build on each other's work, right? So can we not lose hope and trust that whatever bricks we are laying down, that there's a reason for them, and that the pattern will emerge. Yeah. And then where you can find me, where you can find my work. Well, what's very exciting that I would like to share is that at the end of this month, I'll be releasing my debut album of medicine songs. All of the work that I do is always accompanied with live music. So that for me is a big part of the work that I facilitate. So please come and check that out. Come and give it a listen. And apart from that, come to the Netherlands and check in with us to see what we do.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nina. Congratulations. We'll put that we'll put those links in the show notes for everybody too. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, I think certainly with the spelling of our organizational names, it's probably just best not for us to go there right now verbally, and just people can click on links. Thank you for what you just brought up there, Nina. I watched that interview yesterday with Jane Goodall, and if anybody hasn't watched it yet, I suggest you do. It's probably the best thing that Netflix has put out, period. Yeah, I don't know, when she just had this ability to just talk straight into your heart. It was just, yeah, I sat there with tears in my eyes yesterday watching certainly that the last bit. But then when she moved on from hope, it was also again the practicality of that. How do we practicalize? That's not a word, but how do we make hope practical? And there is that element about really bringing it down to the local, really bringing it down to the small actions that I can just do in daily life to contribute to the greater, to contribute to that feeling of interbeing that we have, that we are more than just us, and that we are connected to that person next to us and that community around us, and that, the entirety of everything. And that can just be as simple as she gave the example of, being conscious of where one's throwing one's trash. It's like, it's so small sometimes. And there is that invitation to bring that back to the small and back to the achievable and back to the doable, so that we can maintain our agency, because it's the stripping of agency which is possibly leading us to the chaos, that's brewing around us. But yeah, I'm going to stop there, because we start going on this, and we'll be here for half an hour, which would be a wonderful conversation, but perhaps it's something for another time.
Oh, thank you both so much. I too watched that interview and conversation last night as well. So we're all watching it together, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, everybody, it should be mandatory for everybody to watch it.
It was gorgeous, and that was the word exactly, hope. I actually shared that on the heels of watching that conversation. It was a realization that sometimes the greatest gift as a guide is us until someone can recover their own. Sometimes lending another our own sense of hope is the most precious gift we can give someone in the role of a guide. Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you both so much. Yes, we will definitely put all the links for those of you who are listening and driving out there. We'll put the links so that you can find these two ongoing. And yeah, just deep gratitude to both of you for the work you're doing and for being with us today. Really appreciate both of you.
Thanks for inviting us on.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been lovely.
Thank you for listening to the Microdosing for Healing podcast. Ready to take the next step? Please visit us online at microdosingforhealing.com. There you'll find lots of information about our global community, professional training programs, and upcoming immersions. See you there.